Welcome in. I'm so glad you made us part of your day. I'm Tony Moore, expert food and beverage headhunter, semi-professional podcaster, and I interview the best heads in business to bring you all the important trends shaping the $6 trillion food and beverage industry. My totally awesome brands featured here take us deep into the world of sustainability and the plant-based food movement, the up-and-coming CBD and good-for-you categories. How about the purpose and mission-based companies striving to make real change in our world? They're here too. The latest in food tech. You want to learn how to build a brand, maybe scale a brand? I've got you covered. Don't forget to subscribe and follow me on LinkedIn. Stay tuned. Well, I have Kevin Scott with me again today. Kevin, it seems like everyone I talk to, especially all the companies that I'm seeing online, it just seems like there's so much greenwashing going on. It's really getting obscene. For example, I was just had a conversation and the guy said, green is now the industry gold. And I guess you've seen this too.
Yes. Yeah. It's becoming more and more relevant, and you're seeing it with the people you're talking to, because a lot of these conversations start with you, and then you kind of vet them, and then ultimately we get a podcast to talk a little bit more about it. But yeah, I'm definitely seeing that.
Well, you look at, so they talk about sustainability. They talk about not so much functional, but sustainability. They'll talk about green. They'll kind of wash their, marketing, their PR. And then you look at the label and you're like, you can't even read the label. You have to go to a dictionary to figure out what it is, right, that you're actually, ingesting. Another big trend is functional.
Yeah. Very, very true. And, I think there are the actual players, and then they're the actual wannabes. And I think, what we're going to hear in, a few minutes is we're going to find out one of the players that actually, they walk the walk the talk, talk the walk the walk. It's amazing. A lot of people that talk about it, but when you peel it back, you look at the label, you look at the ingredients, there's a disconnect. But we're not going to have that today. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
Well, you really kind of stole my thunder, because I was thinking, okay, well, can you actually develop a clean label? Can you be transparent and functional and have a fun product that people want? And as you just said, let's find out. And today we have Niall Phelan. He's the founder of the Naked Collective. And I just want to read to you a little bit. Just by the way, really cool website, Niall. Naked Collective is a carbon neutral beverage company born in Ireland, and it's brewed in the United States. And they're committed to creating healthy, functional drinks to improve the health and the well-being of the world's consumers, our communities, and our planet. And they've got two brands. One is MUDE. It's a range of functional wellness drinks, and So Beer, a non-alcoholic beer with benefits. By the way, just love that. I love the way you kind of frame all that up, Niall. What is it that you really want people to know about your brand?
It's probably, first, thanks for the intro, guys.
Absolutely.
And
thanks for being here.
It's probably less so about our brands. I mean, my mission, and investors are probably going to kill me for this, but my personal mission is, to help people understand what they're actually putting in their body. I've been in the drinks industry for 25, 26 years. And, I think I use this phrase a lot when I'm talking to people. I spent most of my career selling things that kill people really, really slowly. I spent a good time in my career doing energy drinks, lots of caffeine, lots of sugar, lots of really long words that don't make any sense to 99% of people on the label. And then, selling beer, selling alcohol. And I want to be very clear. I drink. I'm Irish, right? So if I wasn't drinking, I'd probably be checked into a ward. Yeah, they have special hospitals for people like that, in Ireland. So we get checked in pretty quickly.
Jacket included.
So I like my Irish whiskey. I'm a Guinness fan. I don't drink a lot, but my challenge has been just the jazz hands of the industry. About 4 years ago, I remember having a conversation with my wife, and I was like, I've had an epiphany. She calls it a midlife crisis. I call it an epiphany. Where I had this conversation where I said, I've spent most of my life selling things that just kill people really slowly. I want to leave something behind that when my kids grow up, they can go, you know what, my dad started that. And the idea is to do something really difficult, and that's why it hasn't been done, which is to put the fewest ingredients possible into a liquid that goes on the shelf that everybody can understand the ingredients. I don't know if we always get that right, by the way, but that is definitely the mission.
Well, this is what I find just fascinating is you would think less in a product would be easier. Less in a product. I mean, this is for people who are like not in the food and beverage space, right? You would think it's easier, but for shelf life and all these other things, everything gets pumped into it. So I know you and Kevin are going to probably get into that a little bit more, but that's just kind of fascinating to me.
Well, we get a pretty big ingredients industry that doesn't think less is more. So when we were developing this product about 3 years ago, I sat in one of the largest ingredients companies in the world in their European HQ, and I walked out of a meeting because the brief was really clear. We need some help. Want to create a product, fewest ingredients possible, completely clean. I don't want any bullshit in there. I'm not going putting something on there because I can make a claim and knowing that 90% of what they're consuming goes down the toilet, not into their body. This has to be real. Everything about it has to be real. And we sat with their R&D team and they tried to sell us sodium benzoate, spartamine, versions of a stevia leaf, all of this sort of crap. And I was just like, you're not listening. You're just trying to sell me stuff. And I just left. So it is, there's a whole industry here, and actually putting less in is really bloody hard. It's like, we have shelf stable products, right? So, trying to make a liquid that one tastes good, and we definitely haven't always got that right. That two is shelf stable, and three has the fewest ingredients possible, no preservatives, no stabilizers, and your primary purpose in life is to take another ingredient out to make it cleaner. That's actually, when you get people in from the drinks industry working with you, they're like, this guy's lost the plot. He's gone. He's like, what the hell is going on? I can solve this in 2 minutes with a nice little bit of potassium sorbate or something like that. So it's the way we've been trained in the industry for our whole career, thinking it's okay to put this crap in our body.
Yeah. And think about it too. The key is put it in, make it taste good, mask it, pump it through the system. People will say it's good, and it's driven off of taste, not so much benefits and lack of transparency.
Absolutely, Kevin. And the issue with that is that when you spend your time, because we know a lot of companies who specialize in masking flavors. So, when you get into that, you just end up adding more and more stuff in to balance out the flavor. Our generation one of MUDE, for example. So, for your listeners, these are drinks designed to help you from the morning till the nighttime. You got something to help you get going in the morning. We get a sleep drink to help you sleep, stuff to help you relax. So when we did generation one of that, I remember taking it home, myself and my co-founder, Katrina. We came back from the brewery, we'd put the recipes together and we start tasting them. Her husband was there, my wife. I swear I could see the divorce signals going off across the table as they tasted it. And they were like, you guys we're like, we've got it, we cracked it. They're like, it tastes like absolute crap. I was like, but it's the first time it actually blends together and I can drink it without gagging. That's the starting point, right? So now I can go, how do I find a balance? How do I round it out as we develop it? And because we brew our drinks, we have a lot more options at our disposal than a typical drinks company where you're, mixing some water, some chemicals and some flavors. And and maybe thrown in some powdered vitamins and pretend it's good for you. That's it. It's done. We brew. That takes time, and therefore you can mature flavors. You can balance things out in the brewing.
Was it harder to find investors rather than the traditional, which they kind of know what they're going to get?
I think we've probably been lucky on that front. We've had some good luck and some bad luck. I mean, we started our company during a pandemic, the biggest supply chain crisis and labor crisis that we've seen in modern history, and now what potentially could be a major European war. I'm sort of fed up with world firsts at the moment. Those sort of things spooked investors. We had a deal done for about $10 million in late February, early March 2020 as our seed round. Pretty big investment, one big family company, left New York as the travel ban came into place, and the investment had disappeared 10 days later because that company just was spooked, and their other investments, they were like, we're going to hold on, be liquid, and keep cash to support these other things. So that was tough. But actually for the product itself, gaining investment has been, it's always tough, but it's been a good journey. And I think, we find a lot of high net worth individuals or family offices who are really looking to invest in something that's doing good. And our mission is to do good and to be honest about it when we're not. So.
Yeah. That's, it's interesting, Niles, because I deal with a lot of startups I have over the past 3 years. Key thing I look for is, does the product taste good? I mean, that's a no-brainer. But the challenging part becomes investors. So I know there's people that are going to listen to this that, could be at different stages. So can you talk about, did you lead the charge to get investors, or did you use an outside company to help gather the seed money? What was that process like?
I would say a bit of both, right? So I'm probably a little bit lucky in that I've got the scars and stuff from a few previous startups and have some connections, and was definitely able to reach out into some of that network to talk to investors. But we've also used external firms, big ones like PwC, through to small boutique investment houses, and we often get an investment firm going, well, you got to be exclusive with us. And I, myself and Kat, we debated that early on, and we sort of decided absolutely no way, because I'm not going to be exclusive with anyone. I need the money in. The money is what counts. I think raising investment, you just got to have really tough skin. And, one of the big challenges when you're making food or beverage is, does it taste good? That's such a subjective conversation, right? I do not like sweet products. I don't drink sweet drinks. And when we started out, we had a very almost La Croix bubbly flavor with a hint of botanicals, which personally I loved, but it became very clear very quickly that the consumer wasn't there. So we built up a sweetness profile over time, and we're launching at Expo West what we'll call our final generational product, which is like really sweet profile along the lines of an Alani Nu and a Celsius sort of sweetness profile. And I think, when we put product in front of investors, they're like, hey, well, I want to taste it. It's first, you have your first meeting, everything's great, and then I want to taste it. And I'm like, okay, look, I don't want to offend you. We've had a good meeting, but you're in your 70s. And this is for a woman, 18 to 35 or 18 to 45. You do not have the same taste profile as them. So delighted for you to taste it. But honestly, in this situation, your opinion doesn't count. You got to go share it with some people in that generation. And then if you give me feedback on it, I'll take it. And we still get that with a lot of buyers as well, right? You've been in the journey, Kevin. We get buyers in their mid-50s who go, hey, I don't like that. And you're like, yeah, but you're not 20 and you're not on Instagram and you're not on TikTok and you're not going to F45, 6 times a week. You're just not the target consumer. So taste is so subjective. What we've tried to do is come away from having a taste profile that's probably a little bit more niche to having something that's a bit more mainstream. And it's been we've already gone through 8 generations of the product to get there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point for you to recognize you're not the target and you're not married to the brand taste. It's developed for other individuals, not necessarily you, or some products would be, but that's where I see a lot of people, they can't separate their idea that they have in their mind versus the taste, because they convince themselves it tastes really good. And in my case, the people I've dealt with, 9 times out of 10, it really isn't. And they can't separate who they're marketing towards versus their personal taste.
Yeah, and then look, maybe I'm lucky. I've sold a lot of stuff in my life that I didn't think tasted very good, but we sold an awful lot of it. So if you take the biggest issue in both a startup and in bigger companies are egos, right? So you got to take your ego out of it. Unless you want to go out and buy 50 million cans of the product you're making a year, then shut up and listen, because it's not for you. We got plenty of people in our business who are in that target demographic, and that's who I listen to when it comes to taste profile. I also, I've come across lots of those entrepreneurs as well, and lots of those startups, and they're so wedded and so unwilling to compromise. And ultimately, you've got to be careful about the broadness of your principles. And we're really clear on our principles, and there's things that we won't change. You touched on it at the start, Tony, commitment to sustainability, regeneration, commitment to sort of absolute clean label, simplest ingredients, and the commitment that when you drink our product, it'll work. They're really important things to us. The biggest principle we set out in our business was we'd only use ingredients we give to our kids, and it's a guiding principle in everything we do. So outside of that, if I'm talking to someone in Australia who wants to launch our product, part of that opening conversation is usually, talk to me about the taste profile of that consumer in your market. Because when you get our samples, we need to know, do we need to dial that up, dial it down? Because ultimately, I'm not going to change consumers' taste profiles overnight. I'm not Coca-Cola. I'm not PepsiCo. We're trying to put a product in. We got to give it the best chance of success in your market. And that's sort of how we approach it.
Yeah, Niles, it's interesting. First of all, I liked your website, and for those that are listening, we'll definitely give that out a little bit later. But it's clean, it's easy to follow, kind of like your product, to be honest. And you have a really good Q&A. And one thing that really stood out to me, because you just mentioned ingredients, and what I picked up on was you've got ingredients that have been supported by clinical trials. Can you kind of take us through that, how that evolved and the process and how you got these approvals?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, when we started the business, it was Katrina and I for a good year, funding everything ourselves, hired a couple of people, but it was fully bootstrapped for the first 18 months, right? So, and I do hate that term because it's a really good VC term. But in practicality, you still got to spend some bloody money. The biggest challenge for us was we wanted, for example, when we were picking chamomile and we were like, hey, you know what? I think the right quality of chamomile could really make a difference here to help people relax, but it's only going to relax their muscles, not their mind. So we got to find that second botanical or adaptogen. And so during that discussion with Kat, we sort of said, right, well, why don't we just say that we're not going to use an ingredient unless we can find a minimum of 15 human intervention or clinical studies that determine the minimum amount required to affect the human body and mind, right? And that was just one of the things we took for granted. We went down the rabbit hole on research papers. We discounted them if they were from a university that looked like it was paid for by a company. So we did because a lot of that happens. We did a lot of work to establish the quantities required. And with chamomile, I remember we did about 16 or 17 of these papers and reviewed them. Now, I'm going to be honest, and read every page of those bloody papers. I am not a scientist. That's like my worst nightmare. But we went in, we get into the detail. We got some outside help to help us as well understand them. And then we established we need about 500 milligrams of chamomile in a serve to impact the average person. So that was generation one. And then we realized, well, that's not having the desired impact. Our sleep product now has 1,000 milligrams of chamomile because as we tested it on family and friends, we realized that was the magic number. to have an impact almost every time. And the second part of it was, it can't be like cheap crap. It has to be really high quality. Where's it coming from? Like, where was the chamomile grown? Where was it broken down into either a cold pressed liquid or a high quality, I'll call it sludge for better, I don't know a better word for it. We try to avoid powders, so we try to keep that liquid essence in the ingredients. And what's the measured bioavailability on that, so that we can always get 1,000 milligrams, 90% bioavailability. We know 900 milligrams is hitting the bloodstream. That level of I think investment by me and Kat still pays off today, because we've stuck by a lot of the ingredients we researched, and early on came upon ashwagandha, which is one of I would say our hero ingredients. But I do say to people a lot, there's a lot of products out there that have chamomile in them, and they've got that little chamomile. You'd be better off picking a chamomile flower and having a good sniff. You'll get about the same effect. So this idea of putting chamomile on the label, someone thinks it's going to have an impact, or even buying a chamomile tea that's really cheap. If you're buying a cheap chamomile tea, you're getting nothing.
That's what I was thinking. You kept saying that. I was like we have them in our cupboard, and people, they drink it before bed, and I'm like, it doesn't work.
But if you get the right chamomile, it works. If you get, full, a really high quality dried chamomile flower tea, then the impact is there, and you'll see it, right? You're going to see, it's like buying cheap tea bags. I mean, Ireland is a tea country, although it's a Starbucks country now, like everywhere. It's a tea country, right? So we've two big tea brands, and they're good. They're good quality, but they use the dredges of the tea in their day to day, and then they got their gold blend, which is more flavor. The same with everything, right? So when you break down any plant, any ingredient, you got really good parts of it, you got really terrible parts of it, and it's about understanding in your supply chain that all apples aren't the same.
Just a quick side note, because Kevin and I have been talking a little bit offline about sampling, and you've brought it up a couple of times. Just tell us, when it comes to sampling, how do you approach that?
Sampling in a pandemic is fun. So, two big parts of our strategy when we were about to launch, which was originally March 2020, we were supposed to hit the market. And biggest part of the strategy was a massive sampling campaign, right? In store, on main streets, in shopping malls, all that sort of good stuff. And the second part of it was a big on-premise play, bars, restaurants, casual dining, both of which 6 weeks later were completely irrelevant. So as we started to come out the other side, we've used a lot of online to sample, and we're just about to do a big online sampling campaign. So, we've had people sort of call us quite crazy. We'll go and say, post on social media, we're giving 1,000 packs for free. We just want you to give us your feedback. You click a link, they get a reminder about a week after they get the product, click on, we get a response. We get good responses from those, actually, much higher than average. Probably get about 1 in 4 people who actually fill out the reply, which is pretty decent. And so it's genuinely free. It's not like, come on, do your subscription for 2 months and we'll give you, a free one. So that's been good. We've partnered with HelloFresh to do some sampling in some countries, partnered with some box companies, as in sending out food boxes and different variations on HelloFresh. And those sort of tools are good because you can also target the demographic you're looking to hit. Yeah. And sometimes it does work, sometimes it doesn't work. We've done a lot of sampling on Vine, on Amazon. We can't really break that down into the demographics, so it's tough. And so you're getting quite mixed feedback. But, we've learned a lot during that journey on where best to sample. But right now, we're dialing up on street, in store sampling. That's as we return to normal, that's our mission right now. So I think this year we want to sample about 1 million cans.
Yeah, it would seem like you really want to hit that exact demographic. To your point earlier, I had to keep myself from laughing when you were talking to the investors and you're like, I really don't want you to taste it. I mean, you can, but you're not our profile. And I know, Kevin, you've dealt with those issues, at Coke.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah, I think we've one of our great investors. We got some really good investors. We're very lucky, but one of our investors who's I think he's put money in 3 or 4 times from California, and he was like, hey, it doesn't matter what I think. I'm just going to check with my kids, and so his kids are in their early 20s, and he got it. We've had a few like that, and another investor who's from Ireland, similarly, he's like, hey, doesn't matter. So yeah, it's an interesting conversation because beverage is just so subjective.
It's subjective. And, I'm thinking about your sampling program too. Liquid is expensive to ship out because of all the weight. Are you coming up with smaller size products to send out for sampling, or is it full?
No, we send out full cans because you do need to drink a full can, and it is expensive. And, I'd say a lot of the money we've raised today goes on sampling and the feedback from the sampling and then refining the product. And we found good ways to do that. We've had some terrible ways to do it. But yeah, shipping cans is not ideal. It doesn't, and actually sits difficult with us as an exec team, even around the sustainability of that model. So we've just been, one-way packaging is something we're about to eliminate from all of our sampling, for example. We're also working on launching a compostable sachet version of our products in the summer and using that as our primary sort of e-commerce lead out. So we'd still have our liquid available, but trying to encourage people to jump in and buy the sachets. So yeah, doing a fair bit of work on those sort of things to really still get cans in hand. But the sooner the better we can talk to people in person, the better. We talk about, one can at a time, one customer at a time, one door at a time, one story at a time. That's the mantra in the business.
Yeah, and what I think is amazing too, Niles, is you've been in the beverage business as long as me. And I think what's interesting is when it comes to brand loyalty, I think about CPG industry, all the different products, foods, beverages, but the beverages always rise to the top of having the most brand loyalty. And I'll give you an example. When I was at Coke, when it came to our water, there would be people that would tell us, I will only drink smart water. That's it. That's the only water I want. I will not drink another water. So I would think that's probably the end game that you guys are striving for with your product, which is so unique and transparent.
It's beverages are rituals for most people, right? So it's a really interesting category to be in, and I definitely didn't realize that early in my career. But at some point, I remember going, actually, I drink this product at almost the same time every day, and it's part of my daily ritual. And we're in a place now where I think it's $1 in $20 in the US is spent on wellness, right? $1 in every $20, 1.2 trillion a year spent on wellness. So let's not confuse that with health, right? This is about proactivity around your body. Striving to keep fit, buying products that are going to drive longevity, live longer, be better, all that sort of stuff. I think the rituals involved in that are becoming even stronger with companies like, I'm a big F45 fan, CrossFit, SoulCycle. These guys have created ritualistic brands, and that ties in really well with beverage. So I think finding where our products sit in your ritual every day is really important. And I know where I drink them: mid-morning, just before lunch, can of work, because I know I'll hit a wall in the afternoon, and I don't hit that wall if I take that product at that moment. And a can of chill at about 7 p.m. in the evening, as I just try and go from being crazy work guy to actually getting some quality time with the family. So it's they're sort of built into my daily ritual.
That was just a big light bulb moment for me. You said ritual. I was talking to Kevin earlier. I was trying to suss out what is it about beverage? What is it? And you nailed it. I have a ritual, and there's certain things that I drink. I drink it at certain times of the day. You talk about wellness products. I've been experimenting with fasting. And of course, there's a lot of, you got to have a lot of liquids when you're fasting. and you're keeping things out of your diet, but you can still have coffee. And I find there's just certain things that you just feel like you have to have. And it's just, for some reason, right? Beverage goes into that. Kevin?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to steal that, Niles. Beverages are rituals. I mean, inherently I knew it, but I hadn't heard that, communicated. So I'm definitely going to steal that because I have my habits too.
And it's so, if you think about yourself even, it's so obvious in terms of you'll have a group of people you probably catch up for dinner with every now and again. And you find that within that group, your beverage consumption choice is very consistent every time you meet. And you might meet once a week, once a quarter, or twice a year. But suddenly you're reaching for a bottle of whiskey or something that you don't normally reach for because that is your ritual with that group. You probably have a different choice of food. You've gone to a different restaurant or you've eaten something completely different, but your beverage ritual stays the same. Your daily beverage ritual stays the same. I guarantee you, if you drink coffee, you have them roughly at the same time every day. You reach for certain things the time of day. So that ritualistic behavior, the idea is to go, how does that tie into other ritualistic behaviors during the day? And therefore, how do I become more than a habit? How do I become ingrained in what gets you through your day?
Yeah, and everything you said. So think about restaurants. You go there for the food experience. You don't mind switching up foods. In fact, you probably don't want to eat the same thing every time you go to that restaurant. But when it comes to beverages, you're pretty loyal and you're pretty consistent. So definitely a good way to look at it. And that's why when I first brought it up, beverages just seem to have so much loyalty with consumers versus food. And it's just, and you've experienced it. You've been in the beverage business for 25 plus years.
I want to get us into something else that we talked about earlier. And it's really fascinating. It was kind of part of your mission and your purpose. You said to us when you talked to Kevin and I earlier, that you really wanted to challenge other companies to be better. What does that mean?
Yeah, look, I think, I've worked inside larger companies a lot. My dog's having a little growl in the background, sorry. I've worked inside a lot of bigger CPG companies. Some I've learned a huge amount from them no matter what, but some better than others. I think one of the big bits for me is it's just so easy to throw stuff, as Kevin mentioned earlier. We just throw stuff into drinks. It's like without thinking almost. It's like, yeah, we can just add that. That'll keep the shelf life longer. Yeah, let's just add that and mask that flavor. And I'm being a little bit, blasé about it. There's obviously a bit of R&D that goes on those things, but generally that's the approach. It's like, we can just throw stuff in here. And so I think it's very, very difficult, as I said, to make something that's as clean label as our product. It is far more difficult to make it with less ingredients than it is with more ingredients. And I think when we talk about challenging the industry, first we got to be successful, right? So if we get into the fridge and we become part of the ritual, people start picking us up, we gain a bit of a reputation, then other companies start to look and go, holy crap, when I put my label side by side with theirs, it looks crazy. So I often talk to my team about, guys, if we were on a billboard and it was us and either Red Bull or Monster and we listed our ingredients would fit in a nice little box on the billboard. We'd have to get an extra billboard to cover the ingredients for those products. So typically 30 ingredients.
That's a brilliant marketing idea, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a bad one. Maybe we'll do it. And when we talk about challenge, that's the challenge. Like, come on, guys, you don't need to think about the damage you are doing to people. If you put 50 grams of sugar in a liquid, and then on this per serving, you tell them it's 20 grams or 15 grams, and then, this can has 2.5 or 3 servings in it. Like, be real about the consumer. They're not drinking, one, it's not a resealable container, right? So they ain't drinking a third of that container and then moving on. You've just thrown 50 grams of sugar, 250 milligrams of caffeine into their body, sodium benzoate, which is a derivative of benzoic acid, one of the biggest carcinogens in the world, right? You've put potassium sorbate and all these sort of just this crap into their body. So, doing better or challenging to do better is if we can get people to pick our product up, if we can challenge that and show we can command a premium, not a crazy premium, we can command a premium to deliver that simplified, clean label, to deliver the taste, to deliver the effects, you guys can do it too. So that's a bit of the mission that we're going after.
So I think what's good about this too, Niles, is you're talking not only alcoholic beverages, but non-alcoholic as well. So you're covering a lot of categories in terms of trying to get others to do better.
Yeah, and like beer is, I love beer. I mean, I've had my own brewery. I've sold it. I'm a massive brewing fan. We don't even touch the tip of the iceberg of what you can do with brewing, right? In the modern world, and most breweries are built as mass commercial enterprises, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we don't know what's in our beer. We just don't. We have this beautiful romantic notion that it is water, hops, yeast, and barley. And the reality being that's just not true. There's so much crap going on in the background to stabilize products before they get fermented and after, to stabilize products at the end of a line. It is one of the rarest food and beverage categories in that you do not have to put the ingredients on your can or your bottle, right? What other part of food and beverage in the world do we know of where you do not have to list your ingredients, right?
That's
so I
weird.
think that's crazy.
I'm going to go to the fridge and check that.
You'll find, by the way, some voluntary declarations from certain companies who want to be transparent, but you do not. There's no legal requirement. It's just bonkers. And this is something that, and I'm going to say again, I like a drink. Love a whiskey. I love a beer. I absolutely drink in moderation, and probably not your perceived Irish person, but I don't think there's many of those left in the world. I think Irish people moderate a lot more than most people realize. And, I find it crazy. You also don't have to talk about the calories, right? So we're in a world where obesity is probably one of the single biggest causes of disease, one of the biggest costs to our medical system, right? And I don't have to label that this drink I'm about to knock 12 ounces down of is over 200 calories. So, and it's 200 empty calories, right? It is effectively you're drinking alcohol calories or sugar calories. That is it. So for me, it's about understanding, how does the industry actually, grow up and get transparent? And we've seen this in other big industries as well. But the great thing is we've got lovely challengers coming through. Like, we're tiny in the scheme of things, but there's some amazing companies coming through, like Poppy and Olipop. These are the guys who are just they're challenging it as well, because the Naked Collective ain't going to do it on its own. You've got amazing products coming to the market, taking this really simplified approach and really showing the consumer it can be done differently. And I think if we fast forward a decade, that soft drinks fridge is going to be vastly different. That beer space is going to be vastly different. It's the non-alcoholic beer is the fastest growing category in the Western world at the moment.
Well, that's an interesting
functional
fact.
drinks.
I mean, I drink non-alcoholic beer, but I had no idea. I have noticed the space in the beer fridge, has expanded, which I'm glad to see. But most of it tastes like crap.
Yeah, I think the taste is a big challenge. Yeah, I think the old-fashioned one. So here's a good stat for you. There's about 9 brands, I call them traditional non-alcoholic brands in the US, that make up 40% of the category. Every single one of them is in decline. And not only are they in decline by about 8% in a non-alc category that's growing at over 30%, their decline trebled in the second half of 2021. Then you got 2 sort of core brands in Heineken 0.0 and Budweiser 0 growing at 55-60% combined. Bud 0 delivering most of that growth now. But fundamentally, they do taste good. And I think Heineken, we got to be honest, have probably almost single-handedly been responsible for completely transforming the perception of non-alcoholic beer. But they're made terrible. So, the alcohol's taken out. And with the alcohol being taken out, you take out all of the nutritional value, you take out any goodness in it. And then you've got some craft that's growing like crazy as well. The biggest moment, my biggest eureka moment in this was we were looking at some data about 12 months ago. And the fastest growing non-alcoholic beer market in the world is Australia. I was like, I know a lot of Aussies, and they have a better reputation for drinking than the Irish do. So that was like, holy crap, this is a real movement.
I do like non-alcoholic beer, and I found that the early brands just did not have any flavor. I felt like they were just totally watered down. But I'm still just kind of reeling from the fact that these labels are hiding everything. And I don't want to get started on lobbyists, but that's the power of corporate lobbying, because they have because every other, like you say, why do all the other categories have to list and label? It's because of lobbyists. So that's just, I'll get off my soapbox. But I do know that's one of the big reasons why. Maybe you have a different opinion on this, but you also said it's not just up to the Naked Collective. It's up to these other companies as well to create this groundswell, right? So they are more transparent, because they're not doing it on their own, and they're being allowed to.
Yeah, and it's not about, I have to keep saying this because often I get told he doesn't drink, so he says this stuff because he doesn't drink. I mean, I really do. I can't specify how much I love a nice Irish whiskey, right? So
I think it's like the third time you've said that. I mean, maybe we need to have an Irish whiskey break.
I'm specifying Irish. I do like some Scotch as well, but I'm specifying Irish. I think that we're not trying to shame people. So I know when calories go on restaurant menus and stuff, you get this thing which is, you're trying to shame people into eating less. It's like, no, you just let people make a conscious decision. Yeah. If I'm gonna have an entree that's 1,200 calories, I just like to know about that. I'm probably going to order it anyway. But it might mean that I don't have, a Butterfinger later or something like that. And I think it's the same when you're drinking. It's like, okay, well, if I've had 8 beers tonight and their IPA is, have I just drunk 1,600 or 2,000 calories in the space of 3.5 hours? You might think differently. Yeah. And so, you might have half of that amount, or you just might think about your behavior a little bit more. But you still want people to have a great time. You want them to enjoy what they're doing and have a good time. But do it just consciously, I think, is the big element.
Yeah. I'm kind of switching gears on this one. Because you've been very, very good about telling us kind of where you started, formulation, everything is open. You're not hiding anything, sampling. So talk about how you're getting your product to market, mainly through distribution. What does that look like at this point?
So we're in about 6 countries, but I'll just talk US for the purposes of today. So launched here in the summer and used probably the first 4 or 5 months to just refine what's the right formulation for the US, how do we pitch this, all that sort of stuff. So as of today, we've great national distribution with Keehee on our functional beverages on MUDE. And I can't say enough about Keehee. I hear mixed reports about Keehee and U105. Keehee have been just extremely supportive of our mission, project, brand. So I'm a big fan. We do sell some product with U105 as well, but they're probably about 1/10 the size for us as Keehee at the moment. And then from a retail perspective, and I'm sticking with MUDE just for a minute, we're really good presence now on the West Coast, in the greater LA area, pushing up into NorCal, starting to expand that footprint. We've just launched in the Northeast, Connecticut, Rhode Island, with a nice little presence in New York. We're trying to change that to a big presence in New York. And and we use DSD for that. So we use typical beer distributors, like good sort of tier one beer distributors. We're very lucky. We've got some great partners there, and they're in a place where they're seeing beer volumes decline and an evolving consumer and looking for new things. So that's been great. And then on the soul beer side, we got a great presence in Michigan, again, West Coast and around the greater LA area. And we just launched in Wisconsin, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, good base in New York, trying to push into Texas, Pac Northwest, typical beverage hubs. About eight target areas around the country. We just agreed a deal with CVS for MUDE, so that goes live in April. And then, we got Rayleigh's have been a good supporter up in California for us on Sobeer. In Canada, we've pretty much got national distribution on Sobeer. It's across most retailers and hopefully just going into the last couple at this stage. Yeah, we've been working pretty hard in the background. We're very early days, and we're going through that cycle of trying to break through in the category resets. And I think what we're finding is that our sustainability mission for some retailers is as important as the product, and others who doesn't bother them at all.
So here's an odd question. I don't even know how to. Well, I just need to ask it. When you present and you talk about, we have a product called Naked Collection. Do any eyebrows ever get raised? Does that cause any questions?
There's a lot of ways you could go with that.
Yeah.
I have a T-shirt actually that my two teenage daughters, and they won't let me wear it anymore because it's like got a Naked Collective logo on the chest here, and then on the back it's like "Let's get naked together."
You have to wear that around them. You have a window of maximum embarrassment. You're in the window.
I think my levels of embarrassing them are probably already peaked at the moment. So
peak embarrassment.
But I love that T-shirt. People ask me often. They're like, people will walk up to you when you're wearing that T-shirt and go, "What's this? What's going on with the T-shirt?" So we often, when we're meeting people and talking to people, like the Naked Collective symbol, it's about naked ingredients, transparency. Like you got nothing to hide when you're in your birthday suit. Okay, so. That's the idea. We've got nothing to hide. We get things wrong, we get things right, all that sort of stuff. And the collective is about that collective of great people and great brands. I think when we're talking to customers and retailers, distributors, we tend to be brand focused. So we're either talking to them about Sobeer or we're talking to them about MUDE, and it's very focused on that. And we'll touch on the Naked Collective mission is the same as the brand mission, so it's easy to integrate the two together.
Well, I think we could easily talk to you for an hour, and I promised you a 30-minute podcast. We're blown by it just because there's just so much to talk about. Is there anything that you just want the listeners to know that just before we leave, a final thought?
Website too, yeah.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I think the one thing we really didn't cover actually was just, you talk about greenwashing and stuff like that. And, just to be really open,
give us your thoughts on that.
We generate carbon emissions. We are a consumer goods company. You can't be a consumer goods company if you don't generate carbon emissions. There will be some point in the future when we can offset that. You use a lot of, offset it by, not offset it, but you can find technology where maybe you're not generating as much, but consumer goods, they're called fast moving consumer goods for a reason. People consume them and they move on. So you have an imprint. Our goal is to find really high value offset projects where we pay 2 to 3 times the sort of standard amount of an offset because they're tough projects, right? So, and they're long lasting sustainable projects. So we do that sort of stuff. And then we go over and above by investing in regeneration projects. We've been investing down in improving Amazon in a rewilding project down there. Nothing to do with any of our products, but we just think,
I saw that,
you can't plant trees, and
Positive,
it's a
right?
really cool project.
Positive.
Yeah. And Positive, we're a founding member of, one of the 100 companies that came together to
tell people a little bit about that. I didn't realize you were the founding member. Just give everybody a quick overview of that.
Well, we're one of 100 founding members, so I don't want to take credit for Positive because it's driven by an amazing team. It was easy to become a member because it was already our mission. So, we're really passionate about some crazy stuff. Like, we don't want to go pay to plant trees somewhere that someone's going to plant the trees because it's a good commercial venture. What we'd like to do is reintroduce animals to that area to rebuild the ecosystem or do things that's tough. So, and that's sort of how positive members work. Things like, producing locally, finding local ingredients, not shipping stuff across the Atlantic, only using packaging materials where you can stand over the recycling rate, for example. So things like that are really important to us. And then for us, it's just an ongoing mission to go, how do we want to pay the least amount of money on offsets annually, but buy the highest cost projects. And that might sound like a conflict, but it's purposely a conflict, because if I'm buying less offsets, I'm producing less emissions, but I'm still buying high quality offsets. So that's sort of how we go about it.
I think it's exciting for you right now, because you think about the pandemic last year and what you couldn't do and now what you can do, specifically around sampling. But I think it's been great to really understand where you started and where you are now, some of your successes. But more important is your mission and really the ability to be transparent, because you don't see that. You hear some people talk about it. It doesn't necessarily happen, but with you, it's happening. So I'm kind of curious, is there anything you want to share with people about your website, how to see your product, how to get your product?
Go to tncdrinks.com. T for Tommy, N for Niall, TNC Drinks. You can buy our product on there, get it shipped to your home, but also you can find store locators, so it's pretty much live. We update that every week. Stick in your zip code, you'll find stores nearby there to sell the product. You can find out more, you can go see our science on there, what backs up the ingredients, all that sort of stuff, and you can connect with us there. So that's our hub. But also, if you've any trade listening, or whatever, retailers, distributors, or just people who are curious, we've got a nice booth at Expo West N2308. So we've taken a pretty big booth in the Hot New Products Hall. And we'd love to meet people there and, share the story and taste some product, because we're going to be pouring MUDE on tap. What's the
date of Expo West?
March 9th, 10th, and 11th in Anaheim Convention Center.
Got it. Okay. That's good to know. Listen, this has been great, and I appreciate your time, Tony. Any last thoughts on this podcast? This was very, very informative.
I wish Atlanta was a little more cutting edge with food and beverage. We're not quite there. We're maybe a little too far on the East Coast. I think if I was on the West Coast, I'd probably have a little more access to this stuff. But no, it's super exciting. We're gonna be looking for you in convenience stores and grocery stores soon. Thank you so much for being here today and kind of sharing your mission and your vision and your love of Irish whiskey.
Yeah, well, thanks for listening to a rambling Irishman. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Niall. It's highly entertaining. Appreciate it.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
See you.